Aeons ago, brothers from outer space, under the spiritual guidance of the Masters of Wisdom, the creators of the universe, came to Earth and settled in the core of the planet. Their task was to prepare the surface of the planet for the development of higher forms of biological life and for the reincarnation of souls destroyed in the atomic explosion which had shattered the planet Melona, Lucifer, located between Jupiter and Mars. These higher supralight bodies, completed humans, knew the divine hierarchy's mysteries of creation. They were aware of the planet's inner logos, whose consciousness gave birth to unique soul groups, each able to incarnate at different times. Depending on their specific stage of development in each period, human souls incarnate in order to further their growth. They choose very specific life experiences through thousands of incarnations until they reach completion as human beings. In the beginning, our brothers from outer space built cities in the center of the earth. Agartha, the Garden of Eden, was created, and many collaborators of the Galactic Confederation came voluntarily to Earth. All colors and races of humanoids contributed their genetic material, as well as their plant and animal species, to this biological genesis. In the creation plan of the Cosmic Father, the Earth was considered a suitable living space planetarium, which would produce a universal humanoid able to overcome all polarities and a diversity of climatic zones. Until that point in time, there had been a great diversity of non-humanoid species taking part in the development of souls. The differences were so great that the souls had extreme difficulty reincarnating into the bodies of other star systems. Therefore, the cosmic purpose was to establish a new experimental zone of creation, synthesizing all souls into a universal body type. The Galactic Confederation and its leaders, the Melchizedek Order, the Brothers of Light, descended to Earth to introduce a new type of human being and a planetary pregnancy. They created the human species in their own image and assisted in its genetic improvement. All went well according to plan until the downfall of the angels. The reincarnating animal-like humans were improved through direct genetic intervention and in a short time span developed suitable bodies. The bodies of these creations became perfect in such a short time that souls from Melona, Lucifer, Venus and Mars, who in past times had already gone through cycles of incarnation and creation, were now able to reincarnate on Earth in order to attain completion. From that time on, two types of humans inhabited the planetarium Earth. The true immortal and physically etheric beings in the center of the Earth, who watched over creation and its evolution, and the mortal creations who purified themselves through reincarnation and developed towards human beings. In accordance with the plan, human beings brought forward civilizations which rose and fell. Different soul groups gathered their experiences in these civilizations. However, the guardians of evolution, also called angels, seemingly took the power into their own hands. They saw how beautiful their creations had become. Some of these extraterrestrials from outer space were tempted by the earthly kings who were always offering them gifts, including beautiful women and even their own daughters. Some of the emissaries of the Confederation gave in to temptation. The beings from outer space physically procreated children with the reincarnated beings. This was the only action forbidden by the Elohim. From then on, they had to give up their status of impartiality and immortality. They were banished from the inside of the earth, from Agartha, the Garden of Eden. From then on, they had lost their eternal youth and their androgyny. The inner closed cosmos of a complete human being, through the union of the soul and the body's personality, suffered a separation. They were thus condemned to a fall and a return to the process of human evolution. Initially, the fallen gods lived for a few thousand years, but after Atlantis, to mere hundreds of years. For example, Methuselah reached 960 years of age. Yet the demigods had one consolation. They had paranormal abilities far more advanced than those of ordinary mortals. Through their higher vibrating chakras and energy centers in the physical body, they were still able to make use of their 5 higher senses. They were clairvoyant, clairaudient, clear-feeling, clear-touching, and clear-smelling. Furthermore, they had the gift of magnetism, which they were able to use to heal people. Their knowledge of sophisticated technologies rested in their subconscious. Their extrasensory gifts made them the spiritual guides of the outer world. The prophets, high priests, and magicians of all times have been the souls of fallen gods. Yet all this was part of the Creator's plan, and these souls have made a voluntary sacrifice for the maturing humankind in order to provide it with a light on its path to becoming human and to the Godly Father. Once upon a time, there existed on earth a high culture whose people were filled with the Spirit and knew all the mysteries of creation. These secrets of creation were revealed to them because they lived in harmony with the laws. When human beings choose to live in wholeness and in harmony with the purpose of their spirit and soul, this choice opens the doors to a higher perception, and the universal spirit offers the truth of life through divine inspiration. The result is global enlightenment, and civilization develops. In Atlantis lived the 4th root race, which had reached the pinnacle of its development. Its divinely inspired scientists had acquired the secrets of universal energy. At that time, scientists and divinely inspired masters worked together to draw harmonic technologies out of the spiritual reservoir of the universal Akashic records. For a long time, power and love were united. Human beings did not have an ego separate from the higher self. Humankind experienced a blossoming in all branches of science and in space exploration. Almost all illnesses were curable, and people often lived to a very old age. They had contact with other planets and with outer space human and spiritual beings. The human race living at that time possessed the universal understanding that the planet is a biological living being, and that the planet is a body and its people the cells of that body. People knew neither ownership nor egoism, and they kept their planetary body, the Earth, clean, because they knew that they only had one Earth in common. They could neither sell nor divide it, nor were they allowed to market its water, air, or resources. Everybody had everything they needed. There was no class distinction. There were neither rich nor poor people. They gave to each other and lived in abundance. The living cosmic laws of brotherhood replaced the dogmatic religions and laws. People did not know labor. Rather, they contributed joyfully to the community with their personal achievements. Each individual's talents were encouraged. The understanding of both the inner spiritual worlds and the material outer worlds enabled the archetypes, the risen masters of wisdom, to live amongst humans and to teach them the great mysteries and initiation steps of the temple. The simplicity of the universal knowledge of the 5 elements, earth, fire, water, air, and the cosmic ether, formed the basis of a global sustenance. Humans still recognize that they're a part of God on Earth and that nothing exists separately from God. They were conscious that if they were a part of the creational spirit which had been materializing for millions of years, they had to possess in themselves dormant but almighty powers waiting to be awakened. In mystery schools, step by step, they learnt to rise to a God-human consciousness. No one prayed to a separate God. They still remembered that they were fallen and incarnated angels who had to attend the school of life and be reborn until mastering and living through any conceivable experience. Until the time came when they would ascend to higher dimensions of consciousness. The Masters of Wisdom knew the secret of the expanding and contracting of the cyclic cosmos. In the Indian Vedic texts, it was described as the inhaling and exhaling of God. The expansion of the cosmos from the source was called the Omega cycle, since everything diverged from the source. The further the Milky Way and its suns moved away from the source, the weaker their connection to the spiritual source whence everything comes. This means that all life in spiritual decline or descent to lower dimensions slips into the third dimension of the solid material universe. Atlantis and its race were still anchored in the fourth dimension. The Masters of Wisdom knew that at the peak of this civilization, the cosmic cyclic plan had anticipated that the souls would move down into the third dimension in order to totally experience the forgetting of their divine source and to live through the so-called Dark Age. So far, human beings had experienced a divinely guided matriarchy. The Dark Age experienced the birth of a patriarchy based on personal human will and saw the origin of the ego. The third dimension was induced by a polar shift. The magnetic web of the Earth was damaged. An entire continent sank in a gigantic oceanic catastrophe. But before this occurred, the Masters of Wisdom brought the knowledge of humankind to safety into the pyramids. They did not preserve written texts, but built the pyramids with mathematical precision, using a universal language which can only be deciphered when humankind leaves the cycle of the third dimension, enters the fourth again, and then returns to the fifth dimension. The Masters warned the chosen people of a great catastrophe and sent the pupils and the chosen people to safer lands in order to act as light bearers for humanity on its journey of forgetting. Today we still find artifacts and evidence of this incredible civilization, of its spiritual knowledge, of its ancient people and mythology. The Masters also prophesied that they would return after humanity had lived through the Dark Age. Once love, wisdom, and power are reunited, they will come back to establish a new school of wisdom. During this lowest phase, the extraterrestrials with their higher consciousness could only act as observers and guardians of evolution. Some of them left the planet and went back to Venus and the Pleiades. Another part withdrew into underground cities in the inner dimension of the hollow earth, known amongst other names as Shambhala, Eden, and Agartha. Through the polar shift, the outer layer of the earth was negatively polarized, hence the inner world of Agartha, meaning the Garden of Eden, was separated from the outer worlds. In a symbolic sense, the outer human being was driven from paradise. They used time, consciousness, and gravitational barriers to seal the entrance gates of the golden cities. The Brotherhood of Atlantis. At a time when Atlantis reached its peak, ambitious scientists were determined to draw the last secrets from nature. They directed their research into the control of the gravitational net, just as today's government's secret research projects are involved in the control of all material structure. They studied electrogravitation, the compression of matter through sound and light. They built transmitters for the study of time through large crystals, using geomantic power places for energy field merging. Pyramidal structures were used to communicate with higher worlds. They used science to look for the original sound from which everything came. All this was part of the creation plan until this civilization had reached its peak with its exploration of the outer world. Then Atlantis entered a dangerous phase. Until this time, scientists and high priests had been united. Only a divinely guided human being, one who thinks with his heart and feels with his head, was entitled to divulge the secrets of creation. Such a scientist and high priest was guided by God and higher spiritual hierarchies, and was in harmony with its creations. He never threatened lives through any aspirations for power. But a new dark age appeared on the earth. There were students of masters who had not yet completed their initiation, and who experimented and searched for the original sound, Urton, without the permission of the sacred council of the seven wise beings. With this, the destruction of Atlantis was sealed. Separate thinking without divine guidance, without the intuition from the heart, used for the sake of personal will and power, alienated science and the priesthood. A preordained catastrophe occurred. The Council of the Seven Wise Beings, who at that time resided physically on the earth, withdrew. The Council warned the God-chosen people and sent them to different continents in order to safeguard humanity's descent. After the catastrophe, nations were dispersed. Knowledge, languages, and traditions were divided. Everything progressed in polarity and division. The Dark Age also saw the beginning of the cycle of descent into an ever-increasing division of individuality and of separateness. For the first time, the Dark Brotherhood made its appearance. Until then, all knowledge had been common to all. There had been no knowledgeable elite, neither was the mass of people kept ignorant. There were no rulers, no people being ruled, and no governments or bureaucracies. Most spiritual guides of the outer world, along with the worldly leaders, fell under the influence of polarity. The now self-appointed leaders had their own city-states, and because of the knowledge they kept to themselves, they were worshipped more and more, and were paid duties. The Brotherhood of Atlantis ensured that knowledge was divided into two parts. On the one hand, the exoteric knowledge accessible to all. On the other hand, the esoteric secrets only accessible to the initiated members of the Brotherhood. The saying, "knowledge is power," dates from that time. When knowledge was withheld from the ordinary people, the spiritual decline yielded darkness. Power struggles and dissension arose among the leaders of the Brotherhood, who, afraid of losing their power, used science to develop weapons, because verbal agreement was no longer possible. At first, weapons were developed for defense and later used for aggression. Governments began to spy on each other, and the first secret service agencies were founded to forestall opponents. This tradition is alive today. The secret services not only serve government leaders, but also the powers of corruption. Thus Atlantis, after many declining cycles, finally reached its downfall. At the peak of one of these quarrels for absolute power, the ultimate weapon, a gravitation bomb, was produced in order to destroy the cities of the now fighting elite priests. One part of the secret knowledge of Atlantis was brought to Egypt, another part to Tibet and India. The first pharaohs were the direct descendants of the Atlanteans. Their secret initiation texts were passed on to the Egyptian royal dynasties. Not surprisingly, Atlantis' high technology led to the building of the pyramids and the Ark of the Covenant. Part of the Brotherhood of Atlantis and its traditions survived in Egypt. The Hermetic mystical knowledge directly emerged from this tradition. Ancient secret drawings and archives from Atlantis were used. Akhenaten, Hermes, Trismegistus, Abraham, Pythagoras, all retained their secret. The Brotherhood of the Snake. When the Earth descended into the third dimension and the planetary logos, the soul of the Earth, entered a new cycle of experience, humans reached the zenith of their polarity consciousness. To this day, the cycle of opposites and the feeling of separation has prevailed. One could say that when Atlantis and its continent sank, the Earth left the fourth and fifth dimensions to enter the realm of the three-dimensional material structure. With the fall in the third dimension, the remaining human race lost consciousness of the oneness of all things. Polarity awareness took over, and instead of harmony, more and more opposites entered the consciousness and the actions of human beings. Even the elite priesthood was affected, and they dogmatically defended their truths. Two major brotherhoods arose on Earth, both influenced by Shambhala and Agartha. Together they are called the Brotherhood of the Snake. Shambhala was the seat of the evocation of the Masters of Wisdom. Agartha was the seat of the invocation of the Masters of Wisdom. Together, they embodied the universal polarity of opposites. In the outer world, each brotherhood held the other one to be the Dark Brotherhood, the Black Magicians. The battle between the polarities of the brotherhoods took place over an incredibly long period and reached its peak in the Second World War. The two opposites, the Sun, Illuminati, and the Moon, Luminari, face each other and struggle for power. Yet neither of them can win. They can only overcome polarity. Humanity was influenced by these two contrasting areas of wisdom. All true governing bodies were visited by agents of these brotherhoods and were partly initiated in the evolution plan of humankind. In ancient times, the Brotherhood of the Serpent divided into the Brotherhood of the Yellow Dragon and the Brotherhood of the Red Dragon. Together, they formed the Brotherhood of the Snake. Both undertook the spiritual education of the human race, the Yellow Dragon in the east and the Red Dragon in the west. We can still find the Order of the Yellow Caps and the Order of the Red Caps and their monasteries, which date from that time, scattered throughout Tibet. The spiritual warriors of Shambhala and Agartha foretold that at the end of the cycle of declines, when the final prophecy of the spiritual battle on earth would be fulfilled, they would return to reveal the truth and herald the passing of the Dark Age into the Golden Age. The survivors of Atlantis were the chosen seeds of the fifth root race from which humanity originated. Over many thousands of years, the maturing humankind went into a deep and amazing state of consciousness. The extraterrestrial carriers of light gave the surviving Atlantean priests instructions to start the Brotherhood of the Serpent. The third unknown power to influence the brotherhoods was the eagle, symbolizing the Space Brotherhood. They inspired each brotherhood and their worldly kings to build empires. All wars were instrumental in introducing new historical eras and in creating the history of the human race. It was the old game when two parties fight, the third party and its agenda remain hidden. Thus all world leaders were led by the third power in order to fulfill the world plan of creation. The light carriers from the Federation, also called the Guardians of God, introduced on Earth a secret education program in order to guide the worldly humans in their evolution plan towards completion. At times, the Brotherhood sent messengers to Earth with secret missions. They sought out the spiritual heirs and the worldly leaders of the different epochs and gave them new instructions. The Count of Saint-Germain appeared across several centuries in Europe and finally disappeared during his journey through Asia. The decline of the human consciousness after Atlantis was part of God's deliberate plan in order to move the souls towards completion. Nothing could hinder it, because the web of the planet's basic energy and its electromagnetic radiation increasingly distorted the consciousness of people. Whenever the time was right, they brought new consciousness impulses to the leaders of humankind. This happened through the messengers from the cities of the inside of the earth. Some came as incarnated masters, others as emissaries. Since the destruction of Atlantis, the Brotherhood of the Illuminati prevailed. It started as a sun supremacy with all its masculine attributes. All Western cultural circles carry the symbol of the snake, the pyramid, or the obelisk, which point to the masculine power of the cosmos. Churches and high-rise buildings in our civilization indicate the strength of the male omnipotence. The Sun Masters are the architects of all Western cultures and are now striving to reach prominence through the ruling of the global world order. They all serve Shambhala and work with the Red Dragon, the red-capped Tibetans who are the worldly representatives of Shambhala. The aim of the Brothers of Shambhala, together with their worldly leaders, the Illuminati, is to establish a global world government. The Brotherhood represents the earthbound powers, the Omegapole, the builders of matter. World politics and religions have the same objective. They obey some brotherhood or priesthood, using different means to obtain this single objective. Hence, since the battle in Atlantis, the Brothers of Shambhala have led the spiritual elite to build diverse world empires. What happened to Agartha? The Moon Masters, the Luminari, the immortals who lived in Agartha represented the spirit-bound, the Alpha Pole. The Masters are the protectors of the spirit. They have whole physical etheric bodies and can materialize at any time. They are the keepers of the magnetic field of the earth and of its karma. They are the other polarity, the spiritual alpha powers. They work together with the Masters of Light. They are the keepers of the Grail, the sacred and integral forces of the inner cosmos. The sacred fire holds the 7 original energies which flow in the 7 chakras of the earth and in every living being, organic or inorganic, as the spirit in matter. As such, it manifests as the building plan of God for the world's eras. Agartha exists as the physical etheric city and conceals the opposite poles of the Brotherhood. The Masters of the Moon are the cosmic feminine powers, the spiritual strength, the inner life force. During the Dark Age of the last 26,000 years, the 7 wise bodies from Atlantis, Kumaras, withdrew to Agartha. They formed the negative pole of the inner world and served the progressing outer humanity, serving as a lever. they now have completed their work in the inner world. They knew also that their deliverance was coming at the time of change of polarity, which would bring to an end the cycle of learning for humanity. The inheritance of Atlantis. Many thousands of years went by, entire civilizations grew, and the souls experienced what it is like to be human. The eagle and the brotherhood of the snake watched over the evolution process for thousands of years. The initiates were the keepers of knowledge and were bound to pass on knowledge only to the spiritually mature through initiation and ceremonies. Thus many different brotherhoods emerged with the aim to promote the process of maturing of humanity. The brotherhood's mission was to watch over knowledge until human beings themselves were able to draw knowledge from their own inner selves. Indeed, knowledge without experience is dangerous. Every human being had to grow to the present day in order to become the foundation of the human God. The complete human being is the spiritual law of God incarnated. Every era was the manifestation of a different virtue. In each culture, through the descended avatars, humanity was given a new virtue as a foundation for its human completion. The last avatar, Jesus of Nazareth, manifested unconditional love. The new and last avatar is an avatar group, a group of advanced souls who will all spread the same message on earth, the avatar of synthesis or of ascension. The avatar group introduces the age of Aquarius, in which human beings redefine themselves and recognize that they are one. The brotherhoods created all world religions under the guidance of the spiritual hierarchy. They promoted all trends arising from humankind itself. They impartially encouraged all 12 black virtues and 12 white virtues in order to create a playing field of experience for becoming human. Human beings have the option to choose the virtue they want. They are responsible for the games they play in becoming human. The earth, the physical cosmos, was only created in order to experiment on the physical manifestations of matter. Everyone believes that his intention and point of view are always correct. True goodness and true love are always selfless actions, which have no origins anymore and come from the freedom which dwells in the completed human being. Selfless action never arises to suppress the negative pole, nor to embellish or improve it. Selfless action, a positive action, is worth more than 1,000 words on love and on improving the world. Love always begins where we now stand in life.